So welcome everybody who's just coming in. I went ahead and got started. I had no idea there was going to be a flood as soon as I did that. But I'm Beth Carroll and we're rolling because I've got a lot to cover. All right, believe it or not, and I'm sure you guys all know this, but this is really important for you to understand if you're ever in the room having a conversation about compensation. There are a lot of laws. How many people love California? California for its labor laws. A lot of laws about compensation that affects the workers that you guys are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So California and some others obviously are going toward rules for having pay for all time worked. And they've got it defined in terms of reporting time pay, so if they have to report to duty but you don't actually have something for them to do, they have to get paid for half a day's worth of work. They have travel time. Okay, you can actually pay them a lower rate if they are traveling to a different location than their normal reporting day. You have to pay them minimum wage, but it doesn't have to be their full hourly rate. Callback, on-call, or standby time, and then de minimis time are all things that you have to be aware of in terms of California laws. And then Washington, I think, has some other laws, and Oregon, I think, is also a little bit like that. How many people, anybody in here from California? You probably know this chapter and verse far better than I do. All right. Each state can also set its own overtime rules. So you have to be aware that just because your state defines overtime as over 40 hours in a week, not every state does that. Every state can set their own overtime rules. They just can't be less generous than the federal rules. They can be more generous. And I'm going to probably screw this up, but I think, is it Colorado that's 12 hours in one day triggers overtime? Anybody from Colorado? Colorado's, I know, one of the ones that's got a weird one, so you can look that up. It's like 12 hours in a day, and you trigger overtime. California, I think, is California 8 hours in a day? Yeah.
No,
40 hour week.
It's a 40-hour week.
Or if you do 40, you do 4 10s.
4 10.
And it's overtime after the 10th hour.
Okay, got it. So 10 hours in one day, or 40 hours in a week? Okay. And there are a couple other states out there as well that do something other than the more standard 40-hour work week is what triggers overtime. So you have to be aware of that. And how it affects drivers can be different as well, depending on if your drivers are classified as exempt due to the motor carrier exemption, which means they have to be engaged in interstate commerce crossing state lines. I think, how many of you guys pay your drivers overtime? You know? It seems to be that it's mostly my for-hire carrier companies don't pay them overtime, and guys that are private fleets do pay them overtime. Not exactly sure why on that. But. All right, there are some lesser-known rules that often apply to sales reps. You may not have heard of these things. In some states, you can't hold back part of an incentive earned. So if you told a sales rep, I'm going to pay you a commission on this deal that you just sold, but I'm going to hold it until we collect payment from the customer, you've just violated the law in a couple states. Okay, you can't, but it's really simple to get around, really easy. You don't tell the sales rep you've earned it until it has been paid, right? It's just phrasing. It's just phrasing of how you do it. But if you tell them that they've earned it, then in many states that means you have to pay it within a reasonable amount of time. And if you don't, then you are potentially liable to them for interest or something else for holding their money. California also has rules about commissions. And the way I described a commission a minute ago is a commission is a percentage of revenue or a percentage of gross margin that is typically paid to a sales rep. Many companies pay sales reps actually using a goal-based bonus mechanic. It's not a commission. If they're told, if you sell $1 million, we're going to pay you $10,000, and if your partner, if your buddy over here in the next territory sells $1.5 million, we're going to pay him $10,000 as well. That's a goal-based incentive. That's not a commission. Okay, how am I doing on time? So you want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in trouble by calling something a commission that's not actually a commission, because California has documentation laws on that.